Today you'll discover the complete story of the Bible. You will journey through both the Old and New Testaments, from creation to the final revelation. Prepare to be transformed on this epic journey. Every page of the Bible will come to life before your eyes. The promise is clear. The invitation has been made. Dive in and let the Bible transform your life. It all began in the beginning, before time itself. In the absolute void, only God existed. God never had a beginning. He has always been. He has no origin. He is the origin of everything. He was not created. He is the Creator. Suddenly a burst of light tore through the void. "Let there be light!" commanded a powerful voice, and the universe filled with a blinding brilliance. The heavens stretched forth, and the earth rose up, blanketed by vast oceans and barren landscapes. God surveyed his creation, and in the quiet he decided on the next step. Let us make man in our image. With emotion he sculpted from dust a being in his likeness. "Adam," he declared, and the man opened his eyes, beholding a world freshly born. Yet something was missing. God saw the solitude in Adam's eyes, and with firm resolve determined, "It is not good that man should be alone." While Adam slept, God took a rib, and from it fashioned Eve. Upon waking and seeing her, Adam's astonishment was complete. "Flesh of my flesh," Adam exclaimed, unable to look away. Eve gazed back with a blend of curiosity and wonder in her eyes, the reflection of an unexplored world. But in the Garden of Eden, not everything was peaceful. In the shadows, a cunning figure watched. The serpent, with a delicious grin, slithered up to Eve. "Did God really say you shouldn't eat from any tree in the garden?" it whispered, sowing doubt. Eve hesitated but replied, "We may eat the fruit of all the trees except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil." "You will not die." The serpent's voice grew more intense, filled with seduction. "Rather, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." The desire to know the forbidden ignited in Eve's heart. She took the fruit and ate, also offering it to Adam, who without hesitation did the same. Suddenly they realized their nakedness and felt shame for the first time. In that moment, the garden transformed. The skies darkened, and thunder boomed. God appeared, his face a mixture of pain and fury. "What have you done, Adam?" His voice resounded like a hammer. Adam, trembling, pointed to Eve. "The woman you gave me offered me the fruit, and I ate." Eve, with tears in her eyes, murmured, "The serpent deceived me." The verdict was swift and devastating. "Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life," declared God. And to Eve, "I will greatly multiply your pain in childbirth. In pain you shall bring forth children." The serpent was sentenced to crawl on its belly and eat dust. The harmony of Eden was shattered forever. Adam and Eve, expelled from paradise, faced a harsh and unknown world. As they walked away, the garden faded from their view, and the first sunset outside of Eden was stained red. The creation of the universe, filled with wonders and tragedies, marked the beginning of an eternal story of struggle, redemption, and hope. In the arid plain east of Eden, Adam and Eve had two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain, the firstborn, toiled under the blazing sun, clearing weeds. Abel, his younger brother, led his flock across the grasslands, his face lit by a peace unknown to Cain. One day Cain shouted, "Abel, God seems pleased with you, but not with my offerings. What do you have that I don't?" Abel, gently petting one of his lambs, replied calmly, "It's the heart, brother. God looks at the heart." Abel's words echoed in Cain's mind like a relentless drumming. Days passed, and envy grew within him like a dark shadow. One night, under a star-studded sky, Cain made a decision. "Come to the field with me tomorrow," he said to Abel, his eyes hiding his true intentions. At dawn, the brothers met in the fields. The tension was palpable, the air thick. "Why does God favor you and not me?" Cain asked, his voice a dangerous whisper. It's about our faith, Cain. God wants us to sincerely offer the best, replied Abel, unaware of the looming threat. Suddenly the calm of the field was shattered by a harsh sound. Cain, with a stone in hand, struck Abel on the head. Abel fell to the ground, his eyes filled with surprise and pain. "Cain, my brother," he murmured before his voice was silenced forever. The earth, which until that moment had been a stage of life, became the first witness to the oldest crime. Abel's blood soaked into the earth, crying out for justice to the heavens. Cain, with trembling, blood-stained hands, looked on in horror at what he had done. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his mind, strong and omnipotent. "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know." "Am I my brother's keeper?" Cain replied, his voice broken by fear and guilt. God sternly declared, "Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. You shall be cursed, banished from this land that has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood." At that moment, Cain's life was forever changed. The earth, which once bore fruit under his care, turned barren. He wandered as an outcast, marked by his sin, burdened with being the first murderer in history. The tragedy of Cain and Abel was etched into the heart of humanity, an everlasting reminder of the destructive powers of envy and hatred. Time passed, but the earth became corrupt. The wickedness of man was great. God, looking down in sorrow, decided to put an end to the depravity. In this darkness, one man stood out for his righteousness: Noah. The voice of God thundered deep and clear. "Noah, I have decided to destroy all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. Build an ark of cypress wood, make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and out with pitch." Without hesitation, Noah obeyed. He worked tirelessly, every hammer strike resonating as a judgment against the world's corruption. His neighbors mocked him, their laughter dripping with scorn. "Building a boat on dry land? Noah, you're mad." "Judgment is coming," Noah replied, his voice steady and his eyes filled with conviction. Days turned into months, and months into years. At last, the ark was completed. "Take your family and 2 of every kind of animal. The flood will cover the earth," God commanded. The tension mounted as the animals, led by an unseen force, marched into the ark. The doors shut, and a foreboding silence enveloped the earth. Then the sky darkened. Suddenly, the first drops fell, followed by an unrelenting downpour. At first curious, the people soon filled with panic. "Noah was right," they screamed, running to the ark, pounding desperately on the doors. "Let us in!" But it was too late. The waters rose swiftly, swallowing cities and mountains. Inside the ark, Noah and his family listened to the tumult of divine judgment, their hearts filled with fear, yet also with hope. "God, why us?" asked one of Noah's sons, his voice trembling. "Because we found favor in his eyes," Noah replied, his words imbued with gratitude and wonder. For 40 days and 40 nights the rain did not cease. The ark rose upon the waters, floating on an endless sea of destruction. The cries outside faded away, replaced by the eerie sound of water and the creaking of wood. At last the flood abated, and the ark rested on Mount Ararat. Noah, trembling, opened the window and released a dove. On the 3rd attempt, the dove returned with an olive leaf in its beak. "The land is dry," Noah announced, his voice filled with hope. God spoke again. "Leave the ark, you and your family. Populate the earth and multiply." With tears in his eyes, Noah obeyed. He built an altar and offered sacrifices to God. "I establish my covenant with you," said God, his voice echoing in the crisp air. "I will never again destroy all life by flood. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth." The rainbow, bright and full of color, appeared in the sky, symbolizing God's promise. Noah and his family, standing on the renewed earth, looked to the future with hope. knowing they had witnessed and survived the greatest judgment the earth had known. Through the sons of Noah, God restarted the repopulation of the earth, giving rise to various peoples. Mankind, united by a single language, gathered on the vast plain of Shinar. "Let us build a city and a tower that reaches the heavens," declared Nimrod, their leader. "Let us make a name for ourselves so that we are not scattered across the face of the entire earth." The project progressed rapidly. Bricks piled up, and the tower soared imposingly toward the sky. "Higher," Nimrod commanded. "It must touch the firmament." But in heaven, God watched. "Look," he said to the angels, "the people are united, and all speak the same language. What they have begun to do will not be impossible for them." Suddenly, the noise of labor ceased. A worker calling for more bricks met with an incomprehensible reply. "What did you say?" he asked, his face full of confusion. The response was a torrent of unintelligible words. "What is happening?" shouted Nimrod, attempting to restore order, but the words made no sense anymore. Confusion spread like a wildfire, quick and devastating. "I can't understand you. Speak clearly." In the blink of an eye, communication turned into chaos. Lifelong friends looked at each other with eyes full of despair. "Nimrod, do something!" they pleaded, but even his commands couldn't overcome the babble of tongues. "God has punished us," cried an elder, his voice trembling with reverent fear. "We must scatter." Suddenly the work halted. The great tower was left abandoned, a testament to human ambition and divine judgment. Groups of people, now divided by language, drifted apart. Each family set off in different directions, seeking new lands where they could understand one another. Nimrod, standing at the base of the tower, surveyed his surroundings. The city he had envisioned was crumbling. "This cannot be," he murmured, yet he knew he had been overcome by a far greater force from above. God watched the scattering. "So it shall be," he declared, his voice echoing with authority and sorrow. "Humanity will multiply and fill the earth, but they will not forget the cost of their pride." The tower became a ruin, a reminder of the day God confused the languages and scattered mankind across the earth. Later, God chose a family to become the people who would bring the promised Messiah into the world. One night, as the stars shone brightly, a heavenly voice broke into the life of Abraham and said, "Leave your homeland and your father's house, and go to the land I will show you." This voice was not audible to the ears, but was clearer and more powerful than the roar of any storm. "I will make you into a great nation. I will bless those who bless you, and curse those who curse you, and through you all peoples on earth will be blessed." Abram's heart pounded fiercely. Without hesitation he replied, "Here I am, Lord. I will do your will." The next morning he shared the revelation with his wife Sarai. "We are leaving," he said, his voice firm. Taken aback, Sarai asked, "To where?" "I don't know," Abram replied, his eyes filled with resolve. "The Lord will guide us." The departure was sudden. Abram, Sarai, their nephew Lot, and all their possessions set off on a journey into the unknown. The familiar lands were left behind, and the desert stretched out before them. One night, while camping under the starry sky, the voice of God spoke again. "To your offspring I will give this land." Abram, gazing across the vast lands of Canaan, felt the weight of the divine promise. But the journey was not without trials. In his wanderings from the green plains of Canaan to the mysterious and mystical realms of Egypt, Abram faced challenges and trials, but also constant reaffirmations of God's promise. "Look now toward the heavens and count the stars, if you are able. So shall your offspring be." Years passed, and the wait for offspring dragged on. Sarai, in despair and losing faith in the divine promise, gave her servant Hagar to Abraham. From this union, Ishmael was born, who would become the father of a numerous nation, the Arab people, historic enemies of the people of Israel, yet God had not forgotten his promise. Finally, Sarai, now advanced in years, gave birth to Isaac. Joy filled the home of Abraham and Sarah. "God has brought us laughter," Sarah said, her voice brimming with joy. "Everyone who hears this will laugh with me." The call of Abraham marked the beginning of a great nation. The promise extended not only to Abraham, but to his offspring as well, a lineage that would include kings and prophets, and eventually the Savior of the world. Isaac grew up and married Rebekah, with whom he had twins, Esau and Jacob. Esau became the father of the Edomites, and Jacob the father of the Israelites. Jacob had 12 sons and 1 daughter. His second-to-last son, Joseph, received the promise made to his family. This calling sparked envy in his brothers, who sold him into slavery in Egypt. But Joseph, with God's guidance, rose from slavery to become the right-hand man of the Pharaoh of Egypt. Then a devastating famine struck the land. His brothers, in search of food, came to Egypt, unaware that the powerful governor they encountered was the brother they had betrayed. "I am Joseph," he finally revealed, tears in his eyes, "the one you sold into Egypt. But fear not, for God sent me here to preserve your lives." Jacob, later named Israel, forgave his brothers and relocated his entire family to Egypt, in the fertile land of Goshen. Here, the people of Israel settled, then numbering 70 persons. Years went by, and the 70 people grew astonishingly in number. But a new dynasty of pharaohs rose to the throne. "This Israelite people has become too numerous and powerful," murmured the pharaoh, his voice filled with distrust. "If they ally with our enemies, they could defeat us. We must act with a sudden gesture," he commanded. "Enslave the Israelites. Let them make bricks without rest. Let them build our cities. Keep them under a heavy yoke." The transition was brutal. The Israelites, who once lived in prosperity, found themselves in chains. "Faster!" shouted the overseers, whips slicing through the air and flesh. "There is no rest for the slaves." Moses, born during this time of oppression, was saved from a cruel order by the Pharaoh to kill all male babies. "Throw the child into the Nile," ordered the Pharaoh. But Moses' mother, with a heavy heart, hid her son in a basket and placed it on the river. While bathing in the Nile, the Egyptian princess discovered the basket. "It's a Hebrew baby," she exclaimed, lifting the child with tenderness. "I will name him Moses, for I drew him out of the water." Moses grew up in the palace, yet he never forgot his roots. One day, watching an Egyptian overseer beat a Hebrew slave, rage consumed him. "Stop!" he yelled, killing the Egyptian in a fit of anger. Knowing his life was in peril, he fled to the desert. Years of slavery wore on the Israelites, exhausted and desperate. They cried out to God, "Save us, Lord! Deliver us from this oppression!" God heard their cries. In the desert, a bush burned yet was not consumed. Moses, now a shepherd, approached it cautiously. "Moses, Moses!" called God's voice from the bush. "Here I am," he replied, falling to his knees. The bush said, "I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people out of Egypt." "Who am I to go to Pharaoh?" asked Moses, his voice filled with fear. "I will be with you," God assured. "You will lead the Israelites to a promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey." Moses, following the divine command, returned to Egypt, confronting the Pharaoh with courage. "Let my people go," he declared, his voice echoing through the throne room. The Pharaoh, with a cold stare, replied, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? I will not let Israel go." The plagues began. The waters of the Nile turned to blood, the fish died, and the stench filled the land. Frogs, flies, and lice invaded the houses, sowing chaos. "Moses, plead with your God to stop this," the Pharaoh implored. But each time the plague ceased, his heart hardened once more. There will be one final plague, Moses warned, the death of the firstborn. In the darkness of night, the angel of death passed through Egypt. Cries of anguish filled the air as families woke to find their firstborn lifeless. "Go!" the Pharaoh shouted, his voice broken by grief. "Take your people and leave this place." Then, after 400 years in Egypt, the Israelites set out under the leadership of Moses, with 600,000 men, not counting women and children, approximately 2 million people in total. Moses led them towards the Red Sea, but soon Pharaoh changed his mind. "Let my army pursue them," he commanded, and the war chariots raced after them. By the sea, the Israelites despaired. "Did you bring us here to die, Moses?" they cried out, fear palpable in their voices. "Trust in the Lord," Moses responded, raising his staff. Instantly the sea parted, the waters forming walls on either side, and a dry path emerged. "Forward!" Moses commanded, and the people crossed the seabed. As the Egyptian army quickly closed in, reaching the other side, Moses extended his hand once more, and the waters closed, burying the pursuers in a torrent of divine judgment. Now free, the people celebrated with songs and dances. "The Lord is my strength and my song," they sang. "He has been my salvation." The journey through the desert began, bringing with it new trials. Water was scarce and hunger plagued them. "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to die here?" they complained. Moses, crying out to God, witnessed water spring from a rock and manna, the bread of heaven, covering the ground each morning. At Mount Sinai, God delivered his law. "I am the Lord your God," he declared from the cloud of glory. "You shall have no other gods before me." The people, trembling, agreed to the covenant, yet temptation swiftly followed. While Moses was on the mountain, they crafted a golden calf. "These are your gods, Israel," they shouted. God's wrath flared, but Moses interceded. "Forgive their sin, Lord," he pleaded, "and if not, blot me out of your book that you have written." Mercy prevailed, and the journey continued. Years of wandering in the desert were tough, marked by rebellion and faith, provision and judgment. At last, they reached the border of the promised land. Moses, old and weary, looked at his people. "I will not cross with you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Joshua will lead you. Be strong and courageous." With those words, Moses bid farewell, and the people of Israel prepared to seize the land that God had promised to their ancestors. Joshua, bearing the mantle of Moses, stood before the Jordan, its waters roaring ahead. "Prepare everything. In 3 days we will cross," he commanded, his voice brimming with resolve. The priests advanced, carrying the Ark of the Covenant. As they touched the water, the river halted, creating a dry path forward. "Cross!" Joshua shouted, and the people crossed, their hearts filled with awe and hope. The first great challenge loomed ahead, Jericho with its towering, unbreakable walls. "I have delivered Jericho into your hands," said the Lord to Joshua. "Surround the city with all your warriors once a day for 6 days. On the 7th day, circle the city 7 times, and the priests will blow the trumpets." The tension was palpable. Day after day, the Israelites marched in silence, their footsteps echoing against the walls. The inhabitants of Jericho, watching from above, jeered and hurled insults. On the 7th day, at the sound of the trumpets, Joshua yelled, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city!" The walls collapsed with a deafening crash. The Israelites, with cries of victory, seized the city, fulfilling the divine command to spare nothing alive. But the conquest continued with fiercely contested battles. In Gibeon, a coalition of kings rose up against Israel. Joshua, without hesitation, led his men on a nighttime march. The battle was fierce, and as the day seemed to end, Joshua raised his voice to the sky. "Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, in the valley of Ajalon." The sun halted and the moon stood still, extending the day until the Israelites completely overcame their foes. Never was there a day like that, the annals recorded, when the Lord heeded the voice of a man. The military campaign stretched on, each victory filling the hearts of the Canaanites with terror. The city of Hazor, the strongest of the northern kingdoms, fell in an epic battle. "Burn the city," Joshua commanded, ensuring that Hazor would never again pose a threat. Finally, after years of warfare, the land had rest. Joshua, aged yet undaunted, gathered the people at Shechem. "Choose this day whom you will serve," he proclaimed, his voice resonating with a mix of authority and passion. "But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." The people, remembering the miracles and divine guidance, responded with one voice, "We will serve the Lord, for he is our God." Under the leadership of Joshua, the Israelites took possession of the promised land with God's provision. But when Joshua passed away, the promised land faced a new reality. With their leader gone, Israel found itself in a constant cycle of spiritual highs and lows. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did as they saw fit. The people, forgetting God's commands, turned to the idols of neighboring nations. In response, God raised up nations to oppress them. "Let us cry out to the Lord," the Israelites shouted in their desperation. And God mercifully sent judges to deliver them. Amidst anarchy and sin, Israel's cry for a king grew louder. "We want to be like the other nations," they told the prophet Samuel. "We want a king to rule over us and lead us in battle." Israel cried out for a king, and the chosen one was Saul. Initially, Saul led with courage, but pride and disobedience soon clouded his judgment. On one occasion, he offered sacrifices that only Samuel was to perform. "You have acted foolishly," Samuel rebuked him. "Your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought a man after his own heart." That man was David, a young shepherd from Bethlehem. When the prophet Samuel anointed him, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Meanwhile, an evil spirit tormented Saul. To soothe him, they brought David, whose harp music calmed the king. David quickly gained fame, especially after his confrontation with the Philistine giant Goliath. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that defies the armies of the living God?" cried David. With a sling and a stone, he struck down Goliath, and, with the giant's sword, he cut off his head. Israel celebrated, but the jealous Saul saw David as a threat. Saul tried to kill David on multiple occasions, but David always escaped. Eventually, Saul fell in battle against the Philistines. Fatally wounded, he fell on his sword. "David, son of Jesse, shall reign," recognized everyone. David, now king, united the tribes and conquered Jerusalem, making the city his capital. David was a brave and just king, yet not without sin. In a moment of weakness, he saw Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah. "Bring her to me," he ordered. Following an affair that led to the murder of Uriah, the prophet Nathan confronted David. "You are the man!" Broken, David cried out, "I have sinned against the Lord." Despite his sin, God renewed his promise to David. "Your house and your kingdom will endure forever." David ruled for 40 years, and on his deathbed he instructed his son Solomon, "Be strong and be a man. Obey the decrees of the Lord." Solomon, famed for his wisdom, began his reign by asking for a discerning heart. "Therefore, give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people." He requested of God, who granted him not only wisdom, but also wealth and honor. Solomon built the temple in Jerusalem, a place of majestic worship. But in his old age, Solomon was led astray by his more than 1,000 wives to other gods. His heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, and the consequences of his idolatry marked the beginning of the end of the united and prosperous kingdom. Solomon, the wise king of Israel, closed his eyes for the last time. His death marked the end of a glorious era, and uncertainty loomed over the kingdom. His son, Rehoboam, ascended to the throne, yet the burden of the crown proved too heavy for him to bear. The nation split immediately. 10 tribes rallied together, forming the northern kingdom known as Israel under Jeroboam's rule. Only the tribes of Judah and Benjamin remained loyal to Rehoboam, establishing the southern kingdom known as Judah with its capital in Jerusalem. But Jeroboam, leader of the northern kingdom, fearful that his people might return to Jerusalem to worship, committed the unthinkable. "I will build 2 golden calves," he declared, "one in Bethel and the other in Dan. These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." Jeroboam's sin led Israel into idolatry. The prophets raised their voices in warning, but the nation plunged deeper into corruption. The 19 kings of the northern kingdom followed this path. All were wicked and perverse. None sought God. But the worst was Ahab. During Ahab's reign, darkness fell upon Israel. Jezebel, the king's wife, introduced the worship of Baal, the Canaanite god of prosperity. "Build altars to Baal," commanded Jezebel. Her influence over Ahab commanded the people. Lured by promises of prosperity, they strayed from the Lord. In this era of idolatry, God raised Elijah, a prophet of fiery words and unbreakable faith. "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, before whom I stand, there shall be neither dew nor rain these years, except by my word," Elijah proclaimed before the astonished Ahab. And so it was. For 3 years the heavens were shut, and drought devastated the land. The ultimate showdown between Elijah and the prophets of Baal came at Mount Carmel. "Summon all Israel and the 450 prophets of Baal," Elijah challenged Ahab. The mountain filled with anticipation. The prophets of Baal cried out to their God from morning until noon, cutting themselves and dancing frenetically. When it was Elijah's turn, he said, "Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, let it be known today that you are God in Israel." Fire from heaven descended, consuming the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the water. "The Lord is God! The Lord is God!" the people exclaimed, falling down in reverent fear. The prophets of Baal were executed, and Elijah prayed for rain. Clouds gathered, and a massive storm ended the drought. Yet Jezebel's rage soon showed itself. Elijah fled to the wilderness, depressed and wishing to die. "Lord, enough, take my life." But an angel of the Lord strengthened him. "Get up and eat," he said. "The journey is long." But Israel did not heed God's voice. Idolatry and injustice prevailed. God's wrath manifested as judgment. Assyria, an expansionist and cruel empire, advanced against Israel. "The Lord has sent Assyria as the rod of his anger," proclaimed the prophet Isaiah. The shadow of invasion loomed over Israel, and fear spread like wildfire. "God has abandoned us," they cried, remembering the ignored words of the prophets. The northern kingdom fell, and mighty. Assyria entered the city. Chaos reigned. "Take the men, women, and children," shouted the Assyrian soldiers. "Destroy everything." Houses burned, and the screams of the captives filled the air. "Israel, you who forgot your God, now face the judgment that was announced to you," murmured an old man, his eyes full of tears as he was chained. The Israelites, shackled and humiliated, were led into exile. The children of Israel scattered across the lands of Assyria, and the identity of the northern kingdom faded away. The kingdom of Israel, once flourishing and blessed, was dismantled, yet in the midst of the tragedy, words of hope endured. "The Lord has not forgotten his people," the faithful whispered, clinging to the promise of redemption. Judah, the southern kingdom, failed to learn from Israel's downfall. The kings of Judah and the people scoffed at the warnings. King Jehoiakim, defiant, burned the scroll of Jeremiah's prophecies, but the word of the Lord could not be silenced. Thus, in the year 597 BC, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, besieged Jerusalem. The tension was unbearable. "Why did we not listen to Jeremiah?" some lamented. Zedekiah, terrified, sought the prophet's counsel in secret. "If you surrender, you will live," Jeremiah warned. But the king lacked the courage to obey. After 18 months of siege, the walls of Jerusalem were breached. The brutality of the Babylonians knew no bounds. "Burn the temple," commanded Nebuchadnezzar. "Destroy the city." Flames devoured the temple, the palace, and the homes. The night sky lit up with the glow of destruction. Zedekiah tried to flee, but was captured. Before the eyes of the king, his sons were slaughtered. "This will be the last thing you see," declared the Babylonian captain before blinding the king and chaining him. The survivors, chained and humiliated, were led in long lines toward Babylon. "Our God has forsaken us," they wept. Yet even there God's voice was not silenced. Through Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, God demonstrated his power and faithfulness. Promises of redemption and restoration echoed amidst the desolation. "The plans I have for you are for your welfare," proclaimed the Lord through Jeremiah. "I will bring you back to this land." After 70 years in exile, change came unexpectedly. Cyrus the Great, king of Persia, conquered Babylon in a historic night. "The Lord has given me all the kingdoms of the earth," Cyrus announced in a startling decree, "and he has charged me to build him a temple in Jerusalem. Let anyone who is his people go up and rebuild the house of the Lord." The decree spread quickly among the exiles. Zerubbabel, a descendant of David, rose as a leader. "The Lord has opened a door," he declared with conviction. "Let's return and rebuild the temple." Filled with hope, the Jews began their long journey back to Jerusalem. Upon arriving, they found ruins and desolation. "This was the city of our God," they murmured, tears filling their eyes. Zerubbabel, undeterred, rallied the people. "Let's start with the altar. Let's worship the Lord first." Construction began with great enthusiasm, but soon they faced mockery and threats from enemies. "What are these feeble Jews doing?" they taunted. Nehemiah, resolute, organized the people. "Work with one hand and hold your weapons with the other," he commanded. "Our God will fight for us." In 52 days, the walls were completed. The victory was celebrated with a solemn dedication. The entire nation renewed its covenant with God, crying and rejoicing. But this joy was short-lived. The echo of the prophets faded, and deep silence took over Israel. The heavens, which once resounded with the words of God, now remained eerily silent. The intertestamental period began, marked by foreign rule and internal strife. Alexander the Great, with his unstoppable army, swept across the known world, including Judea. "Under Greek rule, we will adopt their culture," he declared, unaware that his empire would fragment after his death. The successors of Alexander, the Ptolemies in Egypt and the Seleucids in Syria, battled for control of the region. Judea, caught between these powers, became a battlefield. Initially, Ptolemaic rule was bearable, but oppression escalated to an attempt to eradicate the Jewish faith. "Ban their rituals," the king commanded. "Erect an altar to Zeus in the temple." Discontent turned to fury. "This is an abomination," the Jews cried out. In the small town of Modian, an elderly priest, Mattathias, rose up in rebellion. "Whoever is loyal to the Lord, follow me," he shouted, killing a Greek envoy who tried to force him to sacrifice to pagan gods. The spark of rebellion was ignited. His sons, the Maccabees, led a guerrilla war against the oppressors. Judah Maccabee, known as the Hammer, became renowned for his bravery and strategy. "Let's fight for our freedom and our faith," he proclaimed. Battle after battle, the Maccabees defeated the Seleucid armies. In a decisive confrontation, Judah addressed his army, "Trust in the Lord of hosts. It is better to die in battle than to see the destruction of our nation." Against all odds, the Jews prevailed. In the year 164 BC, they reclaimed Jerusalem and purified the temple. Yet the conflict continued. The rise of Rome on the horizon brought forth a new challenge. In 63 BC, Pompey the Great, a Roman general, entered Jerusalem. "This territory is now part of the Roman Empire," he declared. Judea became a Roman province, ruled by procurators and puppets of the Roman Senate. Herod the Great, cunning and merciless, rose to the throne with Roman backing. "I will build the user wants a long, detailed script for a historical documentary video based on the given text, which is a narrative summary of the Bible story from Genesis to Revelation.